Hello, everyone, and welcome back for the latest episode of Market Bites. It's the 27th of August, so definitely the last one in August and kind of the last one of the summer as well. I'm joined by my favourite duo, Brett and Neja. Brett, first of all, how are you?
After Nvidia's print, it's hard to be in a bad mood, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The title will give it away for anyone that hasn't seen the results, but they were stellar, very good. And we will discuss all of that. We're just going to do an Nvidia special, really. So we're in a good mood. Neja, how are you?
Hi Sam, hi Brad. Yeah, I'm well. I actually just came back from vacation. That's why I was not there with you last week. It was nice to have a couple of days off, but now I'm back for Nvidia. That's such a major event for a market, and we definitely can't miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those ones that even if you were on holiday this week, you're going to tune in. You're going to be on
Yeah.
Twitter. You're going to be on X or whatever, just looking to see what those earnings were. Biggest company in the world heading into it. There was a brief period, wasn't there, this year where they were number two, but it was a matter of days, I think, where they got overtaken. So back being up the biggest company in the world, and obviously the biggest weighting in the S&P 500, everyone cares about it. I always find it fascinating that it's always one of the last companies to report in the earnings because they just know the importance. I think it's like, look, we're either going to save we're going to save the day, or really the market's going to fall out of bed because they have that much importance. So they reported last night, just after the market closed. I think it was about 9:15 UK time. Everyone was waiting. All the people were tuning in, and then headline comes out, and on the face of it, Brett, it looked good. I mean, just for reference, as of right now, we're 14 minutes into the cash open, and we're just above 7% higher. So the market likes it. But what was your sort of first thought on it all?
I mean, at this point, I default to like, what is the reaction going to be? Because I think that tells such a good story about where the sentiment is. Maybe not for the AI trade in general anymore. I don't know if we're in that stage where like Nvidia is like the end all be all for the AI trade, but just to see where the sentiment is for the biggest name in the business. And because at this point, quarter after quarter, these numbers are blockbuster, and when you look at last night's print, it's really hard to. I mean, if you want to nitpick, you can find a few things here and there that you're like, oh, that's, I wish this was a little better, like the margin guide and things like that. But it's the number, even the bad things. Most companies would give anything to have those like bad numbers, So you look at a company at this size, a $5 trillion name doubling their earnings and revenue is. And it's not like we're in some bonkers, valuation stratosphere. After updating for the numbers, name trades like 18 times forward earnings. It's to have this type of scale and this growth is unmatched.
Yeah, incredible, absolutely incredible. Neja, I mean, would you echo all of that?
Yeah, definitely. But for Nvidia, simply beating earnings expectations is just not enough anymore because investors have become used to those enormous beats and higher guidance. So strong execution is almost a minimum requirement for them. But I think that what really surprised investors this time was the outlook actually, because Nvidia said that revenue could still grow at around 70% in fiscal 2028, which is like enormous number. And despite this enormous base that they already have. And something I found quite remarkable is how quickly their expectations have changed, because Nvidia generated less than $27 billion in fiscal revenue in the fiscal 2023, and now they generated almost 4 times this amount in a single quarter. And like when you look at the stats, it's just unbelievable that they're still beating expectations and rising guidance every single quarter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, Brett, you go.
Yeah, I just like I have to echo it. It's not to like create this weird vacuum of eTorians talking about Nvidia, but it's just like it's truly puts into context like what this firm is doing. And I think with the last 8 quarters coming into this, the stock fell 6 out of them. I think they've fallen in 4 or 5 straight quarters after earnings. despite the earnings have been, it's not like, oh, finally a good one from them. It's like, it's always a good one at this point. But like Neja said, the outlook is just ridiculous. And the management explained, like, if there was no supply constraint, these numbers would be even higher. And for reference, like looking at fiscal 28, which for Nvidia starts in January,
Yep.
CFO talked about 70% revenue growth. The street's at 57%. So that shows you like how, even though the expectations are high, like how they're not high enough. And when these numbers came in for this quarter, again, came in way ahead of estimates. Multi-billion-dollar beat on revenue, earnings well ahead of expectations, doubled year over year. It's just the size is, I mean, for comparison, the next two biggest companies are Apple and Microsoft, right? Like 4.5 or 4.6 trillion and 4.2-ish. They have like Apple's growing earnings 18% this year. Their fiscal year ends like in September, and then they go to 8 to 9% growth. Probably come in ahead of that, but talking about like 10 to 15% earnings growth for the next biggest company versus what Nvidia is doing, where they just doubled their earnings in this quarter.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. I mean, I'll go through some of the numbers very shortly, some of the stats as well. Just on the open where it jumped 7.1%, that was $359 billion in value, which is just remarkable. And, you know, a company that size doing 7% from the earnings to the open next day is mind boggling. It really, really is. We have our little chat group, don't we, for this? And I put a message in, I think it was yesterday morning, of the 42,000 Nvidia employees, 21,000 of them have a net worth greater than 25 million. I mean, that's not a bad place to be working, is it? If you know,
No,
half of them.
but I looked into this fact, to be
Okay.
honest, and
Is it true?
it's true. It's true,
Yeah.
and their wealth actually doesn't come from salaries. It actually comes from the stock stocks that they're owning, and they have like pretty good stock purchase plan that allows employees to buy shares at 15% discount
Nice little discount.
to the lowest like price of the 2-year period. So they really gained this much of wealth with owning Nvidia stocks, and like lots of this wealth is just on paper, but still working for a company like that and having a chance to buy those shares at discount, that must be pretty good.
And also, right, I mean, listen, 25 mil is a lot of dough. You know, it is a lot of money. But if we all had to answer now, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, is Nvidia going to be higher than where it is now? Is it going to keep developing, innovating, performing? We're going to say yes, right? So you're just thinking like, if you're an employee, you're thinking, well, I don't really want to leave now, because if I stick around a little bit longer, this, you know, is going to go to a $10 trillion stock, and, you know, so on and so forth. And they're probably loving it. It's probably a high paced environment, and they're seeing results every day. And yeah, incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, Sam,
Right.
when
Sorry,
you
go on.
posted that stat, I was thinking the same thing. How can there be so many people with that type of value at that firm who haven't just like walked away and retired?
Yeah.
I was thinking the same.
Yeah, and then I thought the same thing. I'm like, what does that say about how they see the future? Because if you're like, oh, I could just stick it out a couple more years and maybe it's double that or up 50% from that. You know, I obviously, you never know what the stock price will do, but I think that says a lot if like half the employees or almost half have that type of worth and are sticking around.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to be the one that left now thinking, oh, all my teammates are sticking around for another 5 years, and, you know, that 25 is going to turn into 50. Incredible story, an amazing story as well, how they turned it around as well. You know, you go back 10 years ago, nothing company, in regards to where they are now. So yeah,
Sure.
fascinating. Right. So I said I'd go through some stats. So the revenue came in for this quarter, 96.2 billion, we talked about, and up 100%, 106% year over year, 18% quarter to quarter. Phenomenal numbers, incredible. Some pointless stats for you all to talk about down the pub later or wherever you're going. So that would mean it's 1.06 billion of revenue every single day in the quarter, which works out at $44 million an hour. $734,000 a minute and 12,200 every single second, which is just incredible. And like, also what's mind-boggling about that, it's not really going to get any worse. If anything, it's going to get better, and you'd imagine they're just going to keep going from strength to strength. I also did a bit of research into the sort of the onset of ChatGPT, sort of after that launch, which was back end of 2022. So the next quarter, when that sort of ends 2023. So Nvidia made in that quarter, sort of just after ChatGPT, $6.1 billion of revenue and $1.4 billion of net income. So this quarter, it was almost 16 times more revenue and more than 42 times as much profit, which is just, again, incredible what they're doing. And Brett, you know, we cover Nvidia every quarter and we do literally an episode just on it every quarter, rightly so. The reactions to the last few haven't been amazing. And it's actually quite nice to see that we are pushing higher. And you've got to imagine we're not far away from the all-time high now, but this is not just, you know, you'd imagine we test it. We don't know where we're going to finish the day, but it's going to drag other semiconductor stocks with it, memory chip, you know, memory companies as well, and just the broader market. It's the perfect sort of mixture, a cocktail, isn't it?
Oh, completely. I mean, even just taking out, excluding for a second, like the weighting it has in the S&P and the Nasdaq and that sort of thing. Just I think what it means, even just from a sentiment perspective, of like finally seeing, because it's been kind of a weird year. Like, so Nvidia's put together a couple good quarters, continues to put them together, and yet the stock was essentially not really going anywhere. Especially when you look at the semi space in general, the other memory names, the your AMDs of the world, all of these names have been exploding, like triple digit gains at one point in Q2, and Nvidia is just like kind of plodding along. It's up like 15%, which is like good for a normal stock on a normal year, but I mean for the king of AI, while all these other names are ripping, kind of like what is going on? Especially if the thing traded at 100 times earnings, you'd be like, okay, I kind of get it. But like, it's like 20 times, it's like something seems weird here. So yeah, to your point, it feels right to finally see. It's like in economics when like good news is treated as good news instead of having this like weird like bad news is good news is bad type of like what's the Fed gonna. I like when it's like we reward good jobs numbers. You know what I mean? Like, so when you see a good earnings print come out and the stock actually goes up on it, it feels right mechanically.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I remember when sorry, before I come to you, Neja, I remember when I was working in a different role and teaching people how to trade macro data. And when it was around a period where bad news was good news, and trying to work, tell that to people. When people lose their jobs, the market's going to like it because interest rates are going to go down. And they're just like, what? That is ridiculous. So if I'm bullish, I want people to lose their job. But yeah, it's a funny old world. Sorry, Neja, you were about to follow on from Brett.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the valuation of Nvidia because it's interesting because for the biggest company in the world, and for a company of this scale, you would expect a crazy valuation, at least I would. But when you take a look at the numbers, you can actually see that Nvidia is trading at about 18 times forward earnings, as Brad already mentioned, compared to like AMD, which is AMD and Intel, which are at around 40, if I'm correct. And I think that this is the bull case that some investors are making because Nvidia is dominating the biggest infrastructure investment cycle in technology. Revenue is doubling. Management is expecting 70% growth next year, and margins are still staying above 70%. So it all makes sense to keep being bullish on Nvidia, but I also kind of looked at what could be the bear case for the stock and the only thing that I found is the point that whether those earnings are sustainable, because Nvidia is increasingly investing in AI companies.
Yep.
And it also provides guarantees and financing across the whole ecosystem. And eventually, companies using AI need to generate those revenues to justify its infrastructure spending. And there is also growing competition from custom chips developed by Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and also others. So overall, I think that currently NVIDIA might look undervalued at current earnings expectations, but at the same time, it can still look a bit expensive based on the assumptions behind those earnings, because if AI spending keeps growing anywhere near their forecast, the valuation obviously looks attractive. But if this CapEx cycle peaks, earnings expectation could fall very quickly. And I think that, at least from my point of view, this is the only bear scenario that we are looking at the moment. And of course, no one knows what's going to happen. But yeah, I think those are the facts that we are working with.
Yeah, I think it's important, isn't it, to say there are still a couple of risks with every company, but Nvidia in particular, that we do need to be aware of. And I think one direct consumer represented 16% of their quarterly revenue. Things like that are a little bit of a risk as well that you need to think about. So yeah, I think good points there to have made. Nvidia added more revenue in 1 year than it generated in total a year ago. I mean, you're just going to be hearing about these stats all the time, and it's incredible. Just a little bit of eToro promotion on this. I just did a Trader Talks video on Nvidia from a technical analysis point of view. That's up on YouTube for anyone that wants to check that. Link is also in the podcast somewhere as well for you to check it out. Right, Brett, let's talk about what this means for the broader market now, because how many trading days left of August, including today, 1, 2, and then we'll call Monday 3, the 31st of August, and then suddenly we're into September. So obviously we've got another jobs report, we've got another inflation report, you've got the Fed coming out, but we head into, admittedly, a seasonally weak month of the year, but we're going into it with pretty good spirits, aren't we? After this earnings, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you got a few obstacles coming up here in like this next, call it eight days overall. In the last couple that we got Jackson Hole. Like you said, jobs report next week.
Jackson Hole.
Yeah, we got Fed again in a couple weeks, actual official interest rate vote. So I think you got some mixed macro data. You got midterms coming up. September seasonally is kind of questionable. Yeah, inevitably, a few potential headwinds there. But like you said earlier in the show, it's like you save Nvidia for last. And, maybe 5 years ago, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Right now, it doesn't. The numbers are so great, seemingly every quarter. Although I guess the reaction isn't always great. So I guess it can stay in the for better or for worse camp. But I think coming into this one specifically, it's for the better. The reaction's great. The numbers are good. I think it's maybe reassuring some people about the longer. Maybe they're thinking we were in a later inning of the AI cycle. To me, it's still a long runway. I think maybe the street maybe needed a little reiteration of that and some reassurance. But yeah, I mean, the mood's pretty good in the tech world, so that helps.
I think that in the next couple of days, because of NVIDIA results, we might see more focus on companies that are bottlenecks of this industry. It's companies like Micron, companies working in memory, stuff like that, because they clearly stated that those are the bottlenecks that industry is dealing with, and they are dealing with such a big demand. And I would like to see how they will perform in the next days or weeks, or we could say September. I think that that could be very interesting to see.
Yeah, maybe I'll be sorry, go on, Brett.
I was just gonna add, thinking about the ecosystem. It's like we've talked about this before on the show, where we see rotation. When we talk more about Mag 7, maybe go back 3 or 4 quarters, and how like that group tends to have like rotation within that group itself, regardless of like what tech's doing. It's kind of, you're seeing this like that rotation trade, I think, broaden into AI in general. Like go back 6 months ago into February, no one wanted to own software. Then the semi trade came alive. No one wanted to own the hyperscalers, mega cap tech. It was all like memory and semis. Now we've seen some of that money rotate back out, and you look at software now. Like, I mean, everyone's talking about Nvidia today, but Salesforce is up almost 20%. CrowdStrike's ripping. Okta's doing well. I mean, if you look at the software ETF, it was down 40% almost at its lows in February, almost back to its highs. I mean, I think we're starting to see some of this money rotate back to the underloved, which is weird to think that Nvidia was in the underloved group too, but I personally think it was.
I know, I'm with you. We said this, didn't we, last earnings, how, it struggled to push on, and it was maybe a hold, not a buy, until it came to a point where people thought there was a bit more value there. And, you've seen, the move that it had at the beginning of August and follows through with a solid earnings. And, it's just on those memory, names, and we'll just use Micron, Nezha, because you mentioned it. It wasn't so long ago that had a big drop from its all-time high. Yes, it had an incredible run to get there, but that came down to a level where it was 30-40% off its all-time high. It's a big move, and then this admittedly it had a recovery, almost pushed back to sort of $1,000 a share. But Nvidia last night, solid memory play, up again this morning for Micron in early trade. You'd imagine those names can continue now to push on, but they've certainly been volatile. There's been days each week of the last 3 weeks where those memory names are up 5-6%, but then we'll have days when they're down the same number. So it's been, a tough trade to navigate. I go back to saying, for a stock picker, it's been actually quite a tough year this year. I really do believe that. And, we think we mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, for people that are maybe underperforming the S&P by a little bit, I don't think that's the end of the world, because I do think it has been quite tough with some of these moves that we've seen. I really do. Unless you've been on the ball almost to the day, it's been hard to navigate, hasn't it?
Definitely. And all these rotations that we already saw this year, and I bet that we will see some more until the end of the year. I think that those are making this year, 2026, one of the hardest years to beat, for investors to beat SP 500 or other major indices, especially if you are a stock picker and not investing just in ETFs. I think it's so hard to find companies that are like outperforming or being on time with rotating your portfolio correctly. So also, if you look at performance of our popular investors, I think that it's difficult to judge them only on 2026 performance, because it's been very, very difficult.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, the best performing stock in the S&P 500 last year, SanDisk, right? And then you have it at the beginning. Let's say you've got it in your portfolio. You have it at the beginning of this year. Does incredible, another few 100% up, and you think, God, this is easy, this old stock picking game. And then it drops 10, 20, 30, 40%, and then starts to recover again. Like, that is tough conditions, especially when you're comparing it to the broader market. And if you have a few of those type stocks, you're going to have a 3-4 month period where you're down big time, and to have the belief to keep holding those it's tough. It really is tough. And we'll wrap it there, not on the most positive note in the world, but let's remind everyone the biggest company in the world was up 7% at the open and delivered an incredible earnings report. We just now got to cross our fingers that by the time you all listen to it, it's still up, because who knows in this market. Brett and Nezha, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you in September.
See you in September. Take care, everyone.